All right, welcome, my friends. This is Troy Miller with Spicy Jello and F64 Live, representing IEPPV with another, what is this, bi-weekly, every other week program that we're doing. It used to be weekly, but now we're doing it every other week. So just to also give you guys a little heads up from IEPPV, the weeks that we don't do the programs, this program, those Mondays, we're going to do the member mixer or our happy hour. So next Monday, at 6 p.m., we will have our happy hour. So you can go hang out in the Zoom chat with all of us and sit there, bring your beverages and your snacks. Next program, which will be 2 weeks from now, will be my lovely daughter, Kira. And she's going to be talking about WordPress websites. She's going to be talking a little bit about how websites work and how you might want to set one up and how to build a very basic site so that you get an understanding of the back end and the care and feeding and maintenance of a website. So keep an eye out on the emails and on the IEPPV website for that. So without any further ado, I have got a longtime friend, Neale Adair is here with me today. He is also a past president of IEPPV, which means he's gone through the gauntlet, which is great.
Exactly.
You're also a PPA master photographer, and I was trying to figure it out, but you're a fourth generation photographer, is that right?
Third from the family. Third.
Okay, yeah. So your mom and then your father. So your mom,
right? So I guess technically it's second generation because mom and dad are the same generation, right?
oh,
But right, but they each were in their own respect members and masters and went through it independently. Yeah.
That's great. That's got to be fun. Growing up, sitting around, the table. There's got to be a lot of creative conversation about photography and this and that. And all right, so you have a lot of negatives that you've inherited from your father and from your mother, and
then from Elmer Kingham, from the Kingham files. So they go back to the 1920s. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So you're well saturated in photography at all levels. Today, we're going to be talking quite a bit about just portrait retouching in general. I wanted to get really specific on portrait retouching because there's so many different ways that we can handle that. So let's before we dive into that, let's talk a little bit about your equipment. What are the tools of the trade for you that you like to use when you're editing?
All right, so I'll show you. This is the mobile desktop. I'm now working from home, so I'm working off a late 2016 model MacBook Pro, and the Wacom tablet to a medium, and just the keyboard with a keypad and a trackpad.
Perfect. And what is that way over there on the
left?
The
shuttle. Could not live without this.
One of my favorite tools in the whole world.
Yep, could not live without that. So I think it's been about 10 years I've been using one. So very instrumental. Absolutely.
Yeah, those are fantastic. I'll make sure in the show notes to put a link to the Shuttle Pro. That's one of the things that I really can't work without. I actually can't remember a lot of the shortcuts for Photoshop, Capture One, Lightroom, because I just know this button.
Right. Your fingers know. You don't have to even do the thinking. And they actually have great customer support, great service for the Shuttle Pro. So
yeah, it's been really good. So out of all those tools, how long have you been using the Wacom tablet?
Bought my first one in 2008, and just this year gave that one to my daughter. Still working, still going. They're bulletproof practically, So that was the very first one that they made, and so they really kind of do themselves a disservice because they last so long that people just hold on to them. So highly recommend them for sure.
Yeah, it gives you a lot more incremental control than what you can get out of a mouse. And
most certainly. And if the the sizes really do mean something. I couldn't work with the small just because it's just way too small. But if you are a dual monitor, triple monitor person, I recommend the large. But I'm right now using the medium, and it's perfect. And I also do force the proportions. Let me see if I can. And what I mean by forcing the proportions is you can actually concentrate on just an area of the tablet, so you're not having to use the whole thing. And that's a great feature.
Yeah, I use a medium, and I got two 27-inch monitors. I know that you got one 27-inch monitor. You just bought a new BenQ monitor, so
Yeah,
having new toys and new gear is always nice.
it's great. It's great.
Accurate. That was one of the things that we were talking about today. A photographer friend of ours, Tim Engel, which you remember from F64, he on his group, we were talking about color accuracy and color calibration and things like that. And the higher end monitors like yours, the NECs, they will show you the full color gamut, the wide color space, which, as we'll see when we get into editing, could make a difference when you're looking at highlights and shadows and tonal gradations on somebody's face.
Right. We want an IPS monitor or display for sure.
Right.
Yeah. Makes all the difference.
And between
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, there's a difference between calibration and correction. And so those are the things like the internal calibrated monitors. They actually do their work internally. So they're a little bit different than just running a puck in an ICC profile externally.
Correct. And for those that print, you can calibrate your monitors, but if you're not getting back from the lab what you're seeing on your display, then you need to communicate with your lab on how to fix that, because you could be seeing something beautiful and get back maybe just the opposite results.
That's what we were talking about. Yeah. What you see. So before we jump into the screen sharing and start showing your techniques, because you're going to walk us through that, when you're sitting down to edit a job, how much time do you give each portrait? Right. So let's say you did a senior portrait. You've got, I don't know, 20. How many images do you create in a senior session that you need to edit?
Well, it all starts with the business end. The business part of photography dictates all the channels that you're going to take, all the steps you're going to take from there on out. And so communicating with your client, your parent, what their intentions are super important, because everybody's different. And so that helps me determine, how many outfits, you're throwing out questions to the client, because you're preparing them. And so the simple question, how many outfits are we wearing? Those kind of things. In 3 outfits, and we're doing everything in the studio, it could be between 60 and 70 images that I shoot, but they may only see between 30 and 35. And so, and from there, it gets narrowed down even more to maybe a half dozen.
So how long do you spend editing client work? Because you and I have both entered competition, and we both know that a lot of times we'll talk, well, this is a competition image, which could have hundreds of hours.
Right.
I'm maybe exaggerating, but
no, you're not.
So client work, like how long do you spend editing client work?
Great question. So depending on the client, seniors, for example, will have acne, so that requires attention that somebody older or someone younger may not. But 15 minutes, 20 minutes,
is that
clearing up acne, just based. And what I also do is in my pricing information, I briefly describe what the type of retouching we offer, and if there's anything specialized that they're looking for, then a price will be quoted. If they're missing a tooth, or something really odd like that requires more attention, then there's a cost for that. But basic hair removal, skin softening, blemishes, wrinkles under the eyes, that gets taken 15, 20 minutes, and that's included. I don't charge extra for that. That's just automatically included. Where you get into more detail, more hair removal, then the price goes up, and that is all negotiated during the sale.
Oh, nice. So how much work do you do to an image before the client sees it for the first time? So basically, we'll call those proofs. Do you do 15 minutes per image?
No. So on proofs, part of my my process is to use a third-party program, and portraiture, I believe is what I use. And so as I'm exporting my images out of Lightroom, I've done just simple adjustments. In fact, I've created, what do you call them, Troy, when you create something in Lightroom that you can just press a button and it just, boom, does it. I got those. So
Preset, action.
Presets, that's it. So, right. So my little preset button will give just a basic color that I'm looking for, tonality, softness, sharpness. Okay. Very, very basic. And then it exports into portraiture, which opens up another window. And that will not 100% remove blemishes, but really soften them, really soften them. And then it puts my logo on there, and now they're ready for a slideshow. So it's really automated. It's totally automated.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So you've really taken some time, and I think this is kind of where I'm going with this line of thinking, is that as a business, you want to create the highest quality work possible. You really want to over impress your clients, but you can't spend 15 minutes an image.
You cannot spend 15 minutes an image. Also, you only have one opportunity for that first impression, right? And our showrooms, our screens are getting big. I have a 72-inch display in the studio, and they're like sitting 4 feet away from it. So that pimple on the face is like a crater, if it's there. Yeah. So
I don't think our clients want to know how close up we get to see their face, right? It's
exactly
close.
Exactly.
So with that in mind, right? What is some of the software that you mentioned? Portraiture. What is some of the other softwares that you use? Because there's a set of tools that you sort of create a funnel, an editing funnel, to get the best quality you can with the least amount of touching. So
the least amount of touching, and that's just for proofing. I do not use those proofing images for the final product.
Okay.
So that's important to note.
You're looking at my notes, aren't you? You knew I was going to.
Yeah, because that's it's soft proofing, and I think our client, our customer, knows a lot now. They can do so much on their phones and their devices, and in regards to skin softening, and so that very universal, soft, washed out look is available with the touch of a button. So and it looks that way. So you've got to caress your images. You've got to hit them by hand. You really do. Yeah. And the more you do it, the faster you get. Yeah.
Right now, I mean, like if you haven't done it for a long time, it certainly feels like a lot of work. But the more you do, the faster it gets. I know that Luminar also recently just improved their facial retouching software in there, and that's
what was that? What company was that?
Skylum's Luminar.
It's all right.
Software for doing facial retouching and for batching out. I'll show you later.
Yeah, yeah. You know, as far as where I am now, it's basically batch processing of images and then the final image. For me, they get treated differently, and that may change because things change so fast. But for right now, that's kind of what I've been doing.
So when you're editing an image, what blemishes do you look at? Let's say this is a reorder, right? At what
Right,
point do you decide like, oh, I'm going to take this out or I'm not going to take this out? Like how
right.
far go with editing? You know, wrinkles and bags and things like that.
Yeah, zoom that puppy in 200%, 300% sometimes.
But I mean, do you feel like it's okay for you to remove, you know, a mole or
Mm-mm.
you know, something that like, you know, I have like, you know, scars or pock marks on my head. If you did my portrait, would you take
Right.
those?
I wouldn't unless it was a request by the client. Moles sometimes can be super dark, and so you could lighten them, you know, just a little bit. They're there, but it's lightened, um, and that's something the software, the punch and go software doesn't recognize. It just takes it all out.
Right.
And that's what separates us from um, the machine, is that we have that eye, we have that trained eye, we can make those decisions.
Right. You can look at
Right,
someone's face and decide like those wrinkles need to
right,
stay.
right.
But
And
also the
and
way that
that's the sign of a craftsman. That's craftsmanship.
cool. Well, you know what? Why don't we jump in and start playing with some images? I know you've got some stuff that you're going to walk us through, and we'll just start
Yeah,
editing and playing with that and
cool.
kind of see what you got. Show us how you do the thing that you do.
Okay, all right. So, can we see this?
You've got to share the screen at the bottom.
Oh, I turned you off already. My
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. If you would have had the screen share on, we wouldn't have been able to talk to each other like that.
Gotcha, gotcha. All righty. Okay. Can everybody see an image of a girl?
Yes. Very good.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off all these layers and just keep this main layer on. All right. So first thing I do is open up the image, and I'll immediately duplicate that background layer, and that's what we have, layer 1. And the reason why I do that is I like to work kind of indestructible. You can always go back to your original, which is right there, right? You can always go back. So I like the process of working indestructibly, so you can always go back if you need to. I tend not to work in lots of layers if I can avoid it. Um, so you kind of have to have a little bit of commitment there. So anyway, so let's zoom her in.
So this is the unedited version, is that correct?
That's correct. Let's get her up here. There we go. So now I don't know when I zoom in how it's looking on your end. So
It looks
right
good.
now she's at 100%.
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay. So this is there's something. Okay. Yeah. So we do have some work on that layer.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. So that. Yeah.
So where do you start when you look at an image? It can be really overwhelming for somebody who doesn't know, like, oh, do I start with the hair, or do I start with the blemishes, or do I start, dodging and burning? And how do you decide where to start?
What's annoying you the most first? What jumps out at you? And
Got it.
and what I like to do is go in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out, because your eye sees things differently when it's zoomed out. If you spend all the time zoomed in at 200%,
Right.
you miss the big picture. You
And you
you
see
you really do.
when you're zoomed
Yeah,
out. Sometimes
yeah.
cloning tracks, or you can
Hmm.
see zoomed in nice and close. So
Totally, totally. So it's very important to go in and out, and especially as our eyes tire, we tend to miss things, and so that's really important. So that's where the Shuttle Pro comes super handy, because there's just no reason to take your hands off your keyboard,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah. So let's see how what you would jump in first and what your methods are for doing that.
Okay, so if I just click on this layer, that'll kind of tell me what I did first. Um, so I went right into her face first. And I'm going to turn off this layer. In fact, let's just put this in a group.
Command G, right?
Yeah, so I've just put her in a group. That way all those retouched layers are in a folder. And now I can work on an unretouched image. So I'm going to start with that background layer that has nothing on it. I'm going to hit Command J, Control J on a PC, and is it Control J? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
and
Control. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. And that duplicates our background layer, which right there it says background copy. That's what we're going to be working on right there. So I don't change brushes. I don't. It takes too much time. I find a nice soft brush that I allow it to have pin pressure. And pin pressure is something that's only that can be attributed to the tablet. And you can go in and you can set that up to where how hard you press down on your pin is how much flow you're getting out of it. And so by that control, I'm controlling it with my hand as opposed to having to look for different brushes. But what I will tell you, so right now, it's all the way up to opacity at 100, flow at 100. So I like to have opacity at 50%. And then if you hit Shift and 01, so, okay, so hit Shift and 5 to get 50 at opacity, and then just hit the number 5 button. Where is it? Should be hitting it. It's not for some reason. So hit a 2. There we go. That's 20%. That's 2%. I think we wanted 20%.
Now I find that interesting. I generally work at 100% opacity and like 10 or 15% flow, and I turn off the pressure because the pressure just annoys me. No other reason. It's a great tool to have if you do that, but that way you can build layers.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's really a compromise of a variety of things, and you find your own. You really find your own, but it takes a lot of experimenting. You just can't jump into it. Even this tablet's still new, this one that I bought for my home office, and I probably spent a week on it before I did anything because it just felt it wasn't set up the way I wanted to. It had a different feel. So there's that. Okay, so my opacity is at 50, flows at 20. I'm going to jump over. I'm going to hit J, and that's going to take me to the our spot healing tool. I'm going to start with that, and we're just going to come in here. So right now I'm at 100%. I can even go up to 200%.
To pick smartly, right? It's using AI to choose what to clone in there. You're not selecting from a location.
Well, it's at content aware, so it is selecting the location for me, and it doesn't always hit it. So if I'm in an open skin area, it's going to do pretty good. It's going to do really good. The patch tool, which is, again, it's over here where the spot healing brush is. This patch tool here allows you to define the source, and I'll just show you that. So okay, so we want to take that spot out right there, and we're just going to figure out another good spot right there, and it just took it. Okay. So that works well. I find it a little bit slower if you're going throughout your image and trying to use it. It's just more steps with your hand. But there are some times when it's totally necessary because it's not you're in an area that is not being friendly to the
right. That can happen if you're trying to clone right next to a dark area or
exactly, or even hairs. Okay, so we got a hair here, and another thing, patch tool. So I'm going to define this. Now, instead of taking my finger and bringing it all the way up, I just let go. Boom.
Yeah.
There.
Closes the loop.
So, yeah. But see, it took those pimples and duplicated them. So, therefore, let's go over to our...
Go back to your handy dandy spot.
Yeah. And, you know, this is just, it's real basic stuff. It keeps it simple.
Yep.
And that's it.
The line that you make can be wider or narrower depending on how much pressure you make.
See that?
Yeah.
See, watch this. So I'm pressing down real hard, and then I'll lift up, and I'll get that fine point. See? So that's the pressure of the tablet. Can't do that with a mouse. Can't do that with a
Richard
trackpad.
is asking, why not the healing tool?
The healing tool, like in the clone.
Well, I mean, technically that is the healing tool. It's just a smart healing tool. If you, the one below.
Is that it there?
No, the Band-Aid tool that you were just at.
All right, this one here. So no, that's clone. I do use clone.
Yep.
Where's the healing?
It's in the same palette as the selection and the. Go up two icons and click and hold. That was 4.
That was 4.
There,
One.
yeah.
Where? There?
To the right. That was to the right.
To the right.
There. Click and hold, and then there's healing brush.
Healing brush. So with the healing brush, you need to define the area.
Yes.
Right?
Area. Yeah.
That's just another step. Which, you know, you might as well use the patch tool. But it works. Yeah. There's a million ways to do one thing.
Of course. Yeah, there's
totally. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's totally cool. And what's nice about it is you can align it. So if you follow my little mouse arrow up here where it says aligned, okay, so right now it's not aligned. I'm going to take this. Well, let's do an obvious one. I'm going to take this area under eye, and I'm going to bring it right here. But if I go over here, right, it's going to keep it there, and it's going to keep it there. So let me go back. I think this is how this works, right?
Yep.
So if it's aligned, what does it do?
Oh, it always chooses from the same point in reference to where you're cloning.
No, it stays right. So it'll stay aligned. I'm pointing on my screen. Can everybody see that?
Thanks.
I'm like, look. Now, yeah, so it's staying right in alignment with my tool. It's not staying on the source that I originally picked. So, you know, there's times when I guess that could be a benefit.
Yeah, that's the only difference. The spot healing brush is intelligent. You basically paint over the spot and then you run it. Yep. All right.
Less steps. So I find myself looking for ways that will produce the less amount of steps, the less amount of time taking myself off the image, so where I don't have to move my hands or look at my hands. My Shuttle Pro has 9 buttons up here that have all of these tools programmed onto them, and that makes it super convenient. So now I just switched to another brush. There's a move tool. That is a brush, and that's the healing brush. So I just moved to 4 different tools with a touch of a button. And it's in my hand, available at any time.
So you're just
I like that.
all those little imperfections, the hair.
Yeah.
Okay. What about that hair that's over her eyebrow on her?
So I would totally move that. That's not a big deal. Now, if there's one right in here, I move it because I wish I would have caught it in camera. Things like this, I'll move.
Sloppy, Neale. Sloppy, so amateur.
You know? But, you know, Troy, you very well know, working outside, you're working with the elements as opposed to being in the studio where there's a lot more control. And these are business headshots, what I'm doing with this client. And so there were a group of these people. So I'm on a tripod. I'm trying to keep everything consistent. Really makes it great for editing later because um, there's a lot of consistency when you're doing that. So let's see where we are so far. So you constantly want to just check your work, check your work, check your work. So now going back to this stuff, I would not remove all of that unless that was specific to the client and she wanted all of that removed. What I like to do, and I'll show you the group here. Let's see if it's in there. There we go. I just softened them. So they're not as sharp, right?
Right.
So
less interest, or less focus
yeah.
is onto them.
Yep. That's all it is. That's all it is. Because you can spend a lot of time in this area right here removing all that.
And I have, and I'm sure you have too. And it's hard to make it look natural.
Natural.
Difficult because you can't just cut the hair off and just clone it out. Like you've got to have a place where it off naturally.
Right. And I'm zoomed in right now at 100%. So I'll go back out, and for these are simple headshots. These clients aren't paying a fortune for these. I'm not going to get rich off this one client doing this. This is the kind of stuff you want to shoot and knock out, and a group full of people. So it took a little bit longer. But if this was just a single client,
Neale, I think did we lose your audio? There we go. Neale, I think we lost your audio for a little bit there.
Sorry. Are we back?
You're back. Yep.
Okay. Sorry. Yes. Don't get bogged down in all these little hairs.
So let's go back to the unedited or the semi-edited version. And what do you do to the eyes? Do you do any work on the eyes? I know that can be kind of one of those contentious points on it.
Let's take a look. Sure. So let's see. Do anything to eyes. Can you see if anything's changing in her eyes at all?
No, I didn't see anything specific. But if you were going to enhance her eyes, what would you do to them?
Right. So, she's close. So I did lighten the bag, so you can see I didn't remove everything.
And how do you lighten those? Yeah, let's see that too. I'd love to see how you do that.
Okay, so let's turn the group off here. So I'll still work on this background layer. And depending what the skin's like, so let's go to the clone. So I'm actually sampling skin on her forehead.
Using this clone stamp tool, okay.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna come in and brush this a little bit. Right? Because I'm just lightening it. The cheek area has a lot of different colors in it on people. You've got you've got one tone here under the eye. Cheeks are usually a little bit redder, and then you've got this area in between. So I want a nice even palette. So I'm going to just pull up in here. Again, my opacity and my flow are really low, so I'm just kissing it. I'm just kissing it.
Right. So opacity is 60. That's the maximum density it'll make, and then flow is 20%, and then you still have it turned on, so you can paint it in very lightly.
Very lightly, and that was just with a couple, right? there. So that's without, and that's with just a couple strokes. And it's already starting to get there.
So we have a question by Mark Charette, who is in Australia, by the way. So he's
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, long distance joiner. He
Cool.
says, do you soften the sharpness of the catch lights at all? I find sometimes if you have distinct diffusers, they become too obvious.
Let's look at our eyes. I didn't do anything to them, but that's just a 3-foot octa. You could even see, if you look at that octa at 12 o'clock, you could see the reflector of the light.
Do you ever soften those, or do you normally just leave those alone?
Unless there's something really distracting. I know in the studio I use a 7-foot umbrella with a diffuser on it, and it leaves the center of the light. There's an object in it, and that's the light itself. And so I take that out only because I don't like the way it leaves. Got it. The catch light, but you could go in there. You could absolutely go in there and do more to it. If you're a little underexposed, or if you're, I like 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock for my catch lights. Then I don't necessarily do anything. But if you wanted to, I have actions for this, but you can, so I just created another layer. It's not a pixel layer. And then I'll go to my layer adjustments. Soft light's very nice. You want to be on the white.
I know what you're going to do. You taught me
Yeah.
this. You taught me this, like, I don't know, 10 years ago. It is the best tool.
And it's very simple, and this is it. And you want to do it opposite of your catch light. You don't want to do it here. You want to do it over here. And you're just going to brush that in, brush it in.
So what you're doing is essentially dodging.
Yeah.
Use a darkroom term, but really what you're doing is you're painting in a lighter color, and you're blending it through the blend mode is soft light.
Yep.
That's
it. So.
Yeah. So a little bit of light under her eye. Yeah, that's really nice.
Just a little bit light.
Would that also be a technique that you would use to bring up the whites of her eyes a little bit if you wanted to brighten them up a tad?
You could. Absolutely. Certainly. I had a doctor that doctors have the worst eyes is because they just lack sleep. And so there were lots of red in the whites of her eyes. And so, if you just paint in white, it's just going to look bad. It's going to look fake. What you have to look at are colors. You have to look at colors to remove. So if these were full of red lines, you would go to your hue and saturation and take out any red and take out the red. You're still going to have the black lines in there, but at least now it's a little bit more defined and a little bit easier to take out. It's super easy to overprocess eyes.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I brought that up, is because sometimes I can see
terrible.
You can just, these are mannequins' eyes, right? Like
these
don't look real. And it's a style. I mean, if you want to push them that far, like, go ahead, but just make sure that you're doing it with intention and not for lack of skill, right? Like you need to do it on purpose. So
I think it has to be taken within context. I mean, in my opinion, for a business portrait, business headshot, typically they're not looking for a painterly technique, or they just want to make a good first impression. And you see a lot of images, and you can tell when somebody's headshot looks over processed.
Right.
And there's no texture in the skin. The eyes are just super sharp. Just doesn't look natural. Just does not look natural. I feel like I don't want to necessarily add. I want to subtract. I want to subtract the things that are distracting her beauty. And I don't mean necessarily distracting, but a blemish can be a distraction. And so I want to take that out. I don't necessarily want to look at an image and go, I need to add this, this, and this, and this.
Right.
You know, and
minimize things. Right?
Minimize. You know, if we needed to liquefy, we could do that. Let's see. Let's see if we can. I may not have my little button.
And then, do you spend any time on the teeth at all?
Her teeth, maybe just a little bit. And I'll need to check her lips.
Normal technique that you need to apply
for teeth.
Yeah. You normally need to do teeth.
I do, and so
I've never really done any work on teeth.
So create an action and call it teeth, and you're just you're taking out any yellow. And so
So are you going to show us how to do that?
Yep. So let's go back.
So you're creating a hue and saturation
layer, right? And come up here to you're in my way. There we go. Okay, so instead of master, you're going to go down to yellow. She doesn't have really yellow teeth, just a little bit in there.
No, it's just an example.
Yeah. So I'm going to move the saturation all the way down. Took out any yellow pigment throughout the whole picture, right? It's gone. And then I'm going to just lighten it just a little bit. All right. And that's it. So now you want to go back to the mask that was created in your layer you created. You want to go on the black and take your G for paint bucket, and that's going to put all that yellow back in. And then you're just going to go back in and brush it. Make sure
we filled the adjustment layer with black now to block the adjustments that you made to the hue and saturation.
Correct.
So yeah,
that's correct.
That before, now we made the layer black, and now you're going to go in and just paint with white.
That's right.
In the teeth, yeah.
And you can create an action that does all of that for you and puts the brush tool in your hand at 100% opacity, and it really makes your workflow scream. Let's see.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and you can make an action to create that layer, fill it with black, already apply all that, and then all you've got to do is pop in there. What is it? It's B, D, and X. I think those are the three, because B for brush, D for default, and then X, which is the colors, the black and white. Default. Right,
and if any of the folks want to learn how to create a brush, we can do that too. So, not a brush, an action for this. I can show folks.
Let's do the action for the teeth whitening.
Okay, so let me just turn this on and off. Can you see that a little bit?
Yep.
So that's before, after. That's all we did. And the great thing is you can brush this anywhere in the mouth, and it's only going to remove the yellow on the teeth. Mm-hmm. It's not going to, you can't do anything to the lip. You get into the skin, watch, if I mark the skin, you'll see it because there's yellow.
Yeah, there's a lot of yellow
there. Yeah. So let's go back and create an action. All right. So let me grab some actions here. So, I do have a teeth. There we go. It's I'm working from home, and I don't have any actions or anything on this computer. So, but I have done teeth. So let's just play teeth, see what it does. Here, let me put it out here.
One of those things that you don't feel like you need to, because it's, if you haven't learned how to create them, that it's unnecessary, right? It's like, oh, that's for somebody who's really sophisticated. Doing 2, 3, or 4, mouse clicks the same on each image, that's an action.
Yes, absolutely. So let's see if it works.
You double click on it.
There it goes. It's still processing, I'm sure, because I'm working on a laptop, so it'll take a little bit longer.
Yep, you're working on a laptop, streaming to the internet across the globe.
Yes.
I think it's done. I'm gonna call it done.
You're gonna call it done? All right, let's see.
Layer you got to fill with gray, with black.
So yeah, so there we go. Next, come back check your brush, make sure it's the opacity, and that's it. All right, so let's delete that and we'll make a new one.
All right.
All right.
Action creation by Neale Adair.
Here we go. All right, so these are all the things that are going to go into creating that action. And so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps. That definitely meets the requirement for an action. If you had to do that for 3 images,
Yep.
you'd be doing this all day. All right, so let's get that. Let's delete this.
Yeah, it's always a good idea that when you're creating an action too, is to work it through and make sure you know how to repeat it. Write down your steps if you can't remember them, and then record them. Because if you're
right, yes,
a multi-step action, and I've got actions that have 20 steps in them, and if you're partway through, it's a real bummer. You can kind of fix it in the middle, but it's not fun. So make sure you make your notes. But actions improve your workflow.
Well, back before Lightroom, we used to use droplets on the desktop.
Yeah.
And droplets are actions.
I still use.
Do you still use them?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And stuff, because you can drag a folder of images and process it. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so let's be bold and see if we can. Hey, I have no actions. All right, there we go. So first thing we're going to do is this little icon right here. That's going to give us top right-hand corner. We're going to, what are we going to do? So let's go to new set because this is our first action. And what a set is basically a folder. And so I'll have like the Adair action set. And within that action set, we'll have eyes, hair, face, anything to do with a portrait, right? And but that will all reside in this action set. I'll just call it Adair portraits. That way, when you export your actions to save them, it just keeps them organized. So when you are getting a new computer, or sometimes when Photoshop updates and doesn't load anything, all of your actions are gone, your brushes are gone. It's because they were never saved. So this makes that whole process easier. Yeah. And that's never happened to me, ever. Never has happened to me.
never 10 times. 9 times maybe.
Never 10. It's like, God, I thought I saved it. All right. So that is our name of our action set. Now we're going to go back to that icon and we're going to hit new action. All right. So what we created was the new set. We named it. And now we're going into new action and we're going to name that new action. See, it's already been set into Adair Portraits, and I'm going to call this action Teeth.
That's a clever name, Neale.
Very good. You know, well, right. And so I even go one step beyond yellow, because teeth are yellow. And now when I go to button mode, it's going to be yellow. I don't even have to read it. I just have to know yellow. That's it. All right. So, okay. So now we're going to hit record. All right, so we can talk for 10 minutes and it's not going to do anything. That record button's not doing anything. So that's the beauty of it, is you may change this process as you're creating the actions. You may delete something and go back to it. It's only going to remember the final steps. I don't know how it does that, but it does. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to our, what did I do? Oh, see, okay, so this is a great example. See, I hit the wrong button. Let's just delete it if we can. Can we delete it?
Yeah.
No, it's not gonna let me delete it. So, let's see. Do I have to?
Remember when
I can delete it.
You got to make sure you know your, you know.
So
you didn't click on make. Let's imagine.
Right. So let's delete that. So the best thing to do is to make lots of mistakes because that's how you learn.
Everything's
right?
an experiment. Yep.
Yeah. So I hit the wrong button. It wouldn't let me delete it while it was in record mode. So you got to just stop the recording. Why this is important to know is I've still had the action in there. It hasn't deleted that. I only deleted a step. So a lot of actions will have, a dozen steps in it, and maybe you messed up. So, and you can go in there and just stop recording, delete just that step, and then start back where you want. So let's go back in. Let's hit record again, and go back here. Now we want hue and saturation.
Yep, hue and saturation.
All right. Now I'm going to not go master. And you can also save a preset. So I could have created a preset already, and see, we've just got CMYK and blue magenta. You can actually create a preset that says teeth. And so it becomes automatic as well. Even more geek stuff than anybody really needs to know. So I go all the way. I go up there. All right. So it's recording all this stuff. I can still talk and go get a cup of coffee and come back. It's not going to affect the recording whatsoever. It won't make it any longer. All right. So now I'm going to hit my my X key. So now I'm going to be on the black, right? And now hit your paint bucket, G. Click on the image, and that's going to remove that feature. All right. And now you're going to hit X because you're going to want to paint on it. And I'm going to hit brush because that's what I'm going to want. And then also, just so you can keep a little bit more organized, you're going to double click on that layer and you're going to rename this teeth.
And that'll be part of the action. Teethy.
Teethy.
I like
there
that.
Yeah. And that'll be part of the action. And then you're going to hit stop.
Yeah.
All right, so
at the bottom, hit the stop button. Right.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
it.
Right. That's it. So if for some reason, like halfway down, I got to fill and I'm like, oh, I screwed up, you could just go to that layer right there and just delete that and start back under fill. And so more complex, what are we doing? Actions, you may have to do that because a lot of it's just trial and error. So before I go to button mode, let's see if this thing even works. All right, so I just deleted it. And I'm going to go to teeth and just hit this little play button. Let's see what it does.
There it goes.
All right, that was it. That was it. And so
then you got to just brush
the
layer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And there she is right there. Wow. Teeth. It named it, and it named it for me and everything. So if you're, sharing, if you're collaborating with other users, it's important to name your layers so they know what's going on. So that really helps. So I will take it out of this mode and go into button mode for this reason right here. So when you get in all of your layers like this, let me load some.
Yeah, then you just double click on the layer. You don't actually have to hit it and play.
Right. See all these, and it's like these are just the Photoshop layers. Yeah, you can just hit them. You can just hit them. What I like to do, there's even, let's clear them all. Delete all actions. Yay, gone. Let's go back.
Mr. Charette has a question in here. I'm not sure that I understand the question, Mark. It says, what I find most frustrating is that the camera raw editing and main Photoshop editing processes are not more similar in terms of using brushes. Is there an action set that mirrors that? You asked that in two questions. I don't really follow that, Mark. Sorry. Maybe you could clarify that for me a little bit, and we'll get that answered for you. So cool. So all right, Neale, let's change subjects a little bit. Let's jump away from the actions, because now we know how to create that. Let's look at some more editing that you would do to her face and the hair. Is there anything that you would do to the hair, like dodging and burning, to bring out the highlights? Because I know that, especially like for her, she's got this beautiful hair with these highlights in there and stuff. Is there anything that you do
Yeah.
to enhance that?
Besides the wispies, especially up here, I don't like those wispies. Let me see if I can.
I'm specifically like dodging and burning to bring out either, the hair highlights, the darken the shadows, those type of things where you're
Sure.
manipulating.
Let's see what I did. So in her case, I did not. I did fill this in. Um, I tried to get it as much as I could done in the camera, right, with lights. So going back to the shoot, so 3 foot octobox on camera right, and so when I'm shooting outdoors, I in this case I was opposite the sun, so the sun's coming in on to my left. So the main light is, well, the only light I use, key light, was on her left, camera right, and there is a reflector right off camera left, and that's it. It was just oh no, my bad. There's a strip light as well over here off of her right shoulder. So so it's a 2 light setup and a reflector on this. So this is all coming from, if I didn't have this highlight here, then I would probably want to, lighten that up in there. But I was happy with it. I didn't, again, want to spend
How would you bring out the
a lot
highlights
of
in
it
her hair? Like especially
in her hair.
the shoulders. She's got a lot of wonderful highlights in there. If you wanted to enhance those, how would you do that?
Yeah, see, here's all that light coming in. So if we took, she's got highlights coming in here. Let's say we did just that soft light. Take that soft light. I'd bring it down to, let's see.
So you're going to use the paintbrush, use soft
Yeah,
light, and grab.
soft light. Yeah, and see how this works. Just kind of brush that in. Where am I? Is that coming in at all?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's it. I didn't do it because I didn't really think she necessarily needed it, but you could do it that way. I mean,
Certainly
you could,
be able to manipulate the highlights and shadows in an image is
absolutely.
really nice. And a lot of these tools are the same tools that you use for everything, right? I mean, just how
Mm-hmm.
you dodge and burn. You can bring up highlights on her cheeks. You can take
Oh
down
my,
shadows.
it's the same tool.
Yeah,
It's the
same.
same tool. I use 3 or 4 tools unless you're cutting out things. But excuse me. Generally speaking, it's a brush, maybe a clone, or spot healing brush. That's
Yeah.
those are them. Because what you're relying now is on your technique. You're not spending the time figuring out what brush you need. You've been there before. You choose the brush, and it's focused more on the technique. Don't, like, for example, the hardness and all this. Leave it all. I just leave it soft. If you want it harder, just make it smaller. That's all. Right. So I can get a fine line in now. Right. That's
Oh,
all.
yeah.
Right. Right. Um, where's my brush?
How would you reduce shine on somebody's face? I mean, she doesn't really have, and you've controlled it really well with your lighting, and her makeup and stuff is very nice. She doesn't have any shiny spots. But how would you reduce that? Like on the bridge of her nose, for example, or next to her left eye. How do you reduce shine? Because sometimes shine can be really bad, especially like on wedding day.
Certainly when they're, yeah. So the specular highlights,
Yep.
you know, let me Let me see if I've got one that's more blown. I have that. This, she might have more. Let's open her up.
Because I know, like on, especially if it's warm or if you've got kids running
Oh
around,
yeah.
mom,
Yep.
she's, the people can get a little bit sweaty. And I know, like on wedding days specifically, like I'm always watching for that. Brides really work hard on their makeup. Well, they all do, but I want to make sure that if I get any specular highlights, that I can pull those down.
Yeah, and with weddings, I mean, your bride, she's running a marathon, and she
Yeah.
has to look fabulous. That's hard. That's hard. Let's see.
Yeah, yeah. I was just curious what technique you might use, even on the girl that you had on there before, just to bring down some of the shine, like on the bridge of her nose or anything. How you would do
Yeah.
that?
I, Let me see. I think she might have more. Um, so even her, she's not so bad. I mean, we have blemishes there. We have freckles. And this is why you retouch, because by hand, because here you have a blemish, but then right up above it, that's a freckle.
Mm,
And she
yep.
wants that freckle.
Yep.
Um, Let me see if I can blow this out.
Yeah. See, you're too good at your lighting. You should, if you had crappy lighting.
Well, but it's makeup too. So that,
Right.
but let's say, um,
And just for everybody that's still sitting in, all the attendees, we're coming up on our hour. And
wow.
so, if you have any questions, get those in there right away. That would be great. I'll make sure that Neale gets those. And then, after you do this, Neale, before we wrap up, I've got a
Yep.
couple images on your website or on your portfolio. I would love for you to tell us the story about, how you made
Sure.
a couple in here that are really
Absolutely.
cool.
Okay. Let me blow out this area. All right, so we got a little blowout there. And let's put them there. All right. So now she's blown out. Right.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to do that. That's too much work.
Because highlights, you can't just simply
There's
burn
no information there.
darken.
There's no information there. There's nothing. So you have to pull from an area where there's information, which is why, clone.
So you're using the clone stamp tool, and you're just going to grab
Yeah,
it from somewhere
I
else.
am. So what I would like to do if I was going to address this issue is probably retouch blemishes or anything like that first, only because if you're pulling from an area that hasn't been retouched, you're just carrying that blemish over to another spot. Oops, wait a minute, you don't want that.
Yeah.
Hold on. History. Go back.
Definitely.
There we go.
So you're
Okay.
just going to grab, usually it's, you grab the color and then you can change your blend mode to darken. Can be, is
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that what you're
Yep.
doing?
I didn't. I'm a little bit more lazy. I just kept just a regular clone, right? Make sure you don't have any blemishes on there. So I'm just picking an area that is close to her skin. Let's see
Very nice.
let's see, right?
Yep. So it helps to know how to create those layers, do layer,
Yeah, yeah.
your
And if you know think of Photoshop as similar to Lightroom, uh, is that it's not destructible. Work in a way that it's not destructible. If I did too much here and thought, wow, there's obviously a big difference between here and here. Um, pull from that darker area. Don't be
right.
afraid to pull from different areas. And so there you go. Still needs more blending, but that just takes time. Pull from different areas, get different skin texture in there.
Yeah. So
Um,
let's jump over to an image I've got on your portfolio. I'm going to take your
okay.
away from you, and we're going to jump over here. So You know, the retouching is really great for the portrait, but some of it is just about lighting and communicating a story. So like this image of this bodybuilder, which I think you entered this in competition, right? This looks like a
I think
competition.
so. Yeah, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you lit this and what your thought process was. Just, and then I realize it's probably more complex than what we have time for, but just briefly, just to give an idea of some creative lighting.
Actually, I believe it was just that's two lights. There may be a hair light, just from the way it looks like it's um, the light's connected from the highlights connected. That edge light is connected from the back of his head to the front. So there's could be three lights into that. So a hair light coming from in front of him, and then two strip boxes on either side.
So if we're looking at this as a clock laying on the floor, right? He's standing
Right.
on the clock. At what time are the two lights?
3 o'clock and 9 o'clock.
Okay. And then I'm assuming they're in front of him so that's how we're getting that edge light or that hatchet lighting.
The I think so. I think so. I'm not sure if I use two strip lights or two 3x4s. If it's the two strip lights, then they're real close to him. Um,
Right. Well, you can
because
create a lot of different kinds of light sources.
certainly. Oh yeah, yeah. I tend to like because in my small space, I like the strip lights with grids because they do give me a lot of control, and that's probably what I used on this. But it's not necessarily a hard light. It's a very manageable light, very forgiving, and so you're not getting hot spots and low spots from it. It's very
Right.
equal. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's very even. Very even.
And I probably did some work on that chain to bring out some of the highlights, like some of those links probably didn't all light up that way because it's on his back. And so I probably went in there with a brush and that soft light feature.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is great, and this is one of the reasons that I really like this image was there are so many things that you could do in this with literally the soft light brush and changing the color from black to white. You
Yeah,
can go in and dodge, and you can burn, and you
yeah,
can create the drama.
right, right.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank
Well,
you.
I went ahead and stopped the screen share. Well, thank you, Neale. That was very awesome. I know that.
My pleasure.
There is so much that goes into editing a portrait,
Mm.
and you've been doing this at least as long as I have, if not longer. I mean, I'm going on 30 years now, right? And so
I'm
the
not 30 years old. No.
evolution of our techniques,
Yes, yes.
you have to work on them over time. And I just
Over.
really encourage everybody that if you don't feel like Photoshop is your friend, or if you think you don't need Photoshop, spend some time and learn how to make it work. And if Photoshop isn't in the budget and isn't something that you have, you can look at other pieces of software like Affinity Photo, where I think it's like $69. If it's not on sale, it's like $49. It's a
Mm.
Photoshop competitor.
Mm.
It's another tool that's amazing. A lot of the techniques that Neale showed today, you can even do in your raw editors, you know, dodging
Mhm. Mhm.
and a little bit of cloning and removing some of those blemishes. And like you had said before, Neale, just to kind of round that out, was you're not adding anything to the image, but you're taking away things that are distracting, or you're
Mm.
reducing the
Mm.
emphasis on those, so you can really do those. So
Yes.
perfect, perfect. Well, thank you guys. Just to remind everybody that this is being recorded. I did hit record on this one, so yay for that. And it'll be posted on the F64 Live YouTube channel here in a few days once I'm done editing it. Not next Wednesday, but the following Wednesday, which I think is the 5th. I will have Kira, my daughter Kira, and she's going to be talking about websites. So get all of your website questions together. She's going to show you how the basics are to set up a website, like a WordPress website. And we'll talk a little bit about hosting and creating email accounts and all those kind of things, which I can't stress enough how important it is to have a professional looking website, whether it's big and deep, or it's just a landing page for somebody to get your information. So again, thank you, Neale. I can hear the crowd. Big
Thank you.
Everybody's clapping. They're all throwing popcorn right now.
Nice,
And
nice.
Peter threw
Laugh
some.
track.
Yeah, that's what Peter does. So anyway,
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.